what would you tell
My
your
younger self.
younger self?
So, that's a classic question.
That's a classic question.
You should copyright that question, by the way. You and Pastor Bongi should copyright that question.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us. Welcome to another episode of Tuesday Connect. My name is Isaac Murage, Pastor for Adults, Marriage and Family Ministries here at Mamlaka Hill Chapel, the city campus. Today we are going to be tackling the third and final part on a series on marriage that we've been tracking over the last 3 weeks. And if you have been with us, you'll remember that we talked with Reverend Mwangi Mushiri about the whole issue of being able to prepare for marriage. And last week we had that very wonderful discussion with Chelimo Njoroge on a topic that we called Before I Say I Do. If you have not been able to watch any one of these, please go ahead and check them out on our channel. And by the way, if you have not signed up or if you have not subscribed to our channel, please go ahead and subscribe right below. It gives me great pleasure to introduce our visitor or our guest today, a longtime friend of mine, none other than Sami Mate. Sema Sami.
Zuri.
How are you doing?
Yeah, you seem to have gotten used to doing this very well, and I can tell you've specialized at it.
Asante sana. Inajua, what do you say? Sometimes there's that terminology, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade, and you better be very good at it.
Right.
I'm sure guys would like to be able to, first and foremost, you are the original Father Abraham. All that came after that were pretenders. So who is Sami?
Right, okay. This is one of those tricky questions that you ask in an interview. Please tell us a little bit about yourself in 2 minutes. But essentially, I would like to think of myself as this person who's number one, first and foremost, a Christian.
Sure.
Okay, I love the Lord. I'm walking with the Lord.
Okay.
And once in a while I fall, but I get up. That's me. But I'm also a family person.
Okay.
Married to Debbie for about 20 years. Actually, it's 18, but we've known each other for 20 years. Okay. So it'll be 18 years this November. And we have 4 children, 4 boys. I'm also sure about the Father Abraham tag anymore because they're no longer babies. My firstborn is 15, taller than me.
Wow.
Then we have twins who are 12, actually 13, and the last one is turning 12 this November.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are a father of boys.
I'm a father of boys. It's a noisy household, but yeah, I think, but the strong one is my wife, Debbie, who I really appreciate and love, and I wouldn't be half the man I am without her.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, that is quite something. So if you've been with us last week, we really talked a lot about the whole issue of being able to know what are the things that you need to know before you say I do. And one of the things that Sami and Debbie have been involved with here at Mamlaka Hill Chapel is our premarital counseling class. And today we want to talk about that space, but not just about premarital counseling class, but these are 2 men. And one of the major challenges we notice is that to a large extent, whenever it comes to matters pertaining to relationships, our ladies tend to be a little bit further up the curve than guys. And the first question I want to ask you, Sami, is this, and I want to put you on the spot a little bit. Are men relationship tone deaf?
To a large extent, I would say, if I was to use my own experience, I would probably say yes.
Okay.
My wife keeps saying that she made the first move because she sort of hinted that she was interested, and then I took over from that. And if she didn't make that first initial step, we probably wouldn't be together.
Okay.
And so there's a certain extent to which men find themselves very blind.
Okay.
And I think it's biological, it's physiological, it's the way we are wired. Some people say concerning the finer things of life when it comes to relationships, and we are not as emotionally intelligent as the ladies are. And so there's a real sense in the truth of that. But I think we also learn quickly.
Okay.
We learn quickly, and we can, in a sense, take our rightful place in the relationship with the understanding that this is how we are wired.
Okay.
So I think it's important that we understand how we're wired. I like the video that we sometimes share with people by Mark Gango, the Christian comedian and pastor, about the right brain, the male brain and the female brain. And he brings it out very well that we are wired differently. And we should not expect that we handle things in the same way as ladies. But yes, to answer your question, to a certain extent, at the onset, we are somehow tone deaf.
Tone deaf when it comes to marriage and everything. I'll say that because I always notice that Alison, my wife, will actually be able to pick up quite a number of things from time to time. And the thing that I've been able to pick up, even as in all these things, is the fact that she'll be very sensitive about certain things. And then the interesting thing and the strange thing is that she'll want me to take over leadership in those matters. So she'll notice that there's a problem and ask me, Isaac, why don't you maybe give your opinion in this matter or that? And then that comes up in this. Is it that our opinion is not being heard? Or maybe is it just the space in which we find ourselves? Maybe we feel a little bit out of our depth when it comes to marriage and relationships.
Let me speak a little bit about the experience of the Garden of Eden, because that question is exactly what relates to what was happening in the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
People say that, some people would like to believe that Adam was sort of taking a walk, reviewing some of the biological qualities of the garden, whilst Eve was talking to the serpent. But no, Adam was right there. And sometimes I use this illustration. I imagine that Adam was simply crossing his hands and saying, interesting conversation. And he almost did not feel or recognize that he had a part to play in shaping the way that conversation went from the beginning. When the serpent talks about, did God tell you?
Yeah.
I thought it would be an appropriate moment for Adam to say, hey, no, hold on. I'm the one who was given the instructions.
True.
This is what God said.
Yes.
You understand? He chose not to. At the point at which Eve decided to take this fruit and eat it, he also said nothing. And so there's this aspect of men seeing things almost like watching them at a distance and doing nothing until there's a consequence.
I like the story I talked about earlier on about the rhino, and maybe it would be good for the viewers to hear that all over again.
The comparison sometimes I make between men and women in this regard is, you are somewhere, say in the national park, and you can see a rhino charging at you. Now, men and women will handle that particular circumstance very differently. A typical lady will probably be aware of the danger and say, hey, you know what? I need help as soon as now. As soon as I can get it. She won't wait for the rhino to get closer. She says, can I get help now? What will a typical Jama do? A typical man will sort of weigh his options and say, okay, you know what? Maybe I have a little bit more time. I can run. He'll think about it. He'll look internally first. Okay?
True.
And by the time the rhino is closer and he realizes, okay, I didn't have the running shoes, that's when it hits him, hey, I'm a bit too late for this. And that's when maybe he'll scream for help or something. And that's how typical men sort of handle situations. We would want to say, I got this first, before seeking help. And so there's a certain page or leaf we can borrow from the lady's book in that regard. And almost look externally sometimes before, be proactive enough to look externally and say, hey, you know what, it's true that I got this, but maybe I could get some help.
Get some help.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing obviously that comes up is you've been heavily involved with our pre-marital counseling classes for the longest time. Generally, what are some of the things you've been able to pick up in every single class as you have tracked with couples?
It's an interesting question. It's a loaded question because there are many things, but I have maybe 2 or 3 in particular. Number one, most men invariably almost come in almost like being pulled or dragged in terms of buku japa. There's something that you need to learn here. There's something that you need to do. And there's almost a sense in which a lot of the men come into the class as part of a project. It's a task on the project list.
Okay.
Tick, done PMCC. Done, the next step is ratios. Next step is dowry payment. You know, it's almost like a tick box. A lot of men come in with that notion. And I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of men come in almost with a gun to their head. And of, nimeambiwa paka nikuje kwa hii PMCC, otherwise I'm not getting married or something like that. That's one thing I've learned. And it's rather unfortunate that a lot of them don't take the initiative, but you are almost forced into a class. But the second thing that I've observed is that because a lot of the format of the class is generally most of the learning happens in a sit down and discuss. We have discovered that a lot of things that we discuss when we are seated down are lost on the men.
Okay.
It's not that they don't understand the stuff, but after a period of time, they just don't remember. They will remember the sessions that we did outdoor, the experiential sessions and so on and so forth. They're very vivid in their minds. But the discussions that we have seated sort of get lost in translation somewhere. And so those are 2 observations. There's a sense in which they're coming in almost to tick a box, but there's also a sense in which they're not internalizing as much as the ladies. So don't get me wrong, a lot of them get a lot of stuff. But if you compare with what the ladies are taking out of the classes, I think the men can do better.
They can do better?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it maybe because of how we are wired in terms of competitions and all that? Because you talked about the experiential class being way much, they can actually be able to remember all those things.
Yeah, I think it's largely because of how we're wired. We learn differently. Men learn differently. Number one, a man will be more interested in this particular experience if there's a short-term gain. And what are the short-term gains? Oh, you know, number one, it's a feast for the senses, for the eyes, or something to touch, you know, something that I can talk about in the evening, you know. If it is interesting, exciting, even better if it's competitive and interactive, that's something that would represent a short-term gain.
Okay.
But number 2, if it is because we are wired in such a way that we would like to consume things that have immediate short-term gains, and we don't think about the long-term unless there's a consequence, there's a sense in which we are trying to work and to see how do we structure the learning experience, and so that the lessons that are more long-term get internalized better. And so yeah, it's largely to do with the way we are wired, the way men learn, and the way men internalize things. Yeah.
You know, I'm getting a lot of I'm getting an aha moment in terms of maybe that's the reason why you find a lot of guys come into marriage and suddenly they're so lost because it was a project.
Yeah.
There were all these things that needed to be done. I mean, and he has worked very hard. He gets to, then one day he's suddenly told man and wife.
Yes.
And all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, so this is the end.
Yeah.
And suddenly he has a woman in his house and he doesn't completely know what to do.
Yeah.
Because he just simply never, the aim was to be able to get to a specific point. And obviously, this is PG, so obviously you cannot be able to go too far. But you can say there were certain short-term gains.
Yes.
And they are found.
Correct.
And then, boom, doesn't know what to do at that moment.
It's an interesting, there are 2 sides to this coin.
Yes.
I tell ladies this, especially ladies who have this nice little list of things that a man that who will be their husband should have. Every lady has that list.
Yes.
And I challenge the ladies and ask them, if maturity is on that list, remove it.
Oh, wow.
That's a controversial statement.
That's a controversial statement.
But let me clarify this. Men don't mature in the same ways ladies mature. Men mature through experiences.
True.
They don't mature naturally by age. Okay, that has been my experience.
Okay.
And so I tell ladies that, for example, the wedding. The wedding is actually for the man. If you think about it that way, because he has to stand up in front of people and say, I do, okay? And so just by that act, there's a certain leap of maturity he experiences, which if you deny him that, he misses it out.
Okay.
Misses out on that. Another opportunity for a man to mature is, for example, holding his own biological baby. You understand? There's a certain leap of maturity a man experiences by that. Okay, and so men mature by experiences. Ladies don't. Okay. And so I say there are two sides of that coin. That a man will get into marriage, may have very little in terms of mental readiness,
okay,
or emotional readiness for this, but yet this is the same thing that will then mature him.
Wow.
So two sides of that coin, it just depends on how they handle it. Are they aware that this is what they need? This is why when we do the rites of passage experiences, we always say that, that for the ladies who are going through ropes, having a sit down and talking about the experience really helps. But for a boy, taking him out there into a wilderness, he will have a newfound revelation about his weaknesses, his strengths, and his abilities. It's interesting when you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I think that the whole thing about rites of passages. So actually, the wedding is almost like a rite of passage.
It's a rite of passage for the man.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to be ushered, I think we are very keen about being ushered from one space to another. That's why I think even in football, and I think I work with men, I always notice that if you want to lose them, have something that is very open-ended.
Correct.
They will be like, okay, but you tell them it is from this point to this point.
Right.
That's why I think that's why you do so well in sport.
Correct.
Because sport has rules. There's a target, there's a goal, there's a perimeter.
Yes.
So you know this is how I'm supposed to.
And we know how the game ends. You understand?
Yes.
If we don't know how the game ends, we are not interested in it. And so you can tell that aspect of short-term gains and so on and so forth. But the issue of the wedding is very interesting, because in African culture, people always say the wedding is for the man. But when you think about it critically,
when you meant the wedding for the woman.
Oh, sorry, I said in African culture we said that the wedding is actually for the woman. But when you think about it, when a man stands in front of people, especially in public, and says these vows, it might not hit him what he's saying. If I use my experience, for example, it only hit me 1.5 years that, wow, did I say these words? You know, and yet my wife Debbie had internalized these words long before the wedding, and she had been thinking about them. She even probably prayed about it. Yet for me, when I read those words 1.5 years after marriage, said, was that me who actually said these words? What was I thinking? But if I didn't do that, that realization wouldn't come to me. And so that rite of passage is very important.
Okay.
The other rites of passages that I always say, especially within the context of the relationship, that would help, especially ladies, allow men to go through. Like I say, when a man also gets to take responsibility for a child, that's another rite of passage. Okay, it's important that men are given that responsibility. So it's not just for the sake of let's get a child. No, it's because of what it does to the man. Okay. And so it matures that man. It's interesting when you think about it that way.
All right. Okay. Let's change gears a little bit. Married man. Sammy of I think 1.5 years you kind of look into this, but how has marriage? What are some of the major effects of marriage on you as an individual?
Yeah, I have to say this, that as we taught PMCC and we interacted with the couples, we used to say this to them, but we never used to, or at least I never used to think that it would actually apply to me. We keep telling couples that when you get into a marriage relationship that God has ordained,
Yes.
He asks you to do what does not come naturally.
Yes. Wow.
For the man and for the woman, okay? For the man, it's almost it's telling you that you need to learn how to love. And that does not come easily, I can tell you from my own experience. For the woman, it's telling her that she needs to learn how to submit as Christ submitted to God. You know, not making her any less a person, but submitting to the husband. And so for me, the lesson I've learned is that this thing is not easy.
It's not easy.
Learning to love is not easy.
Yes.
I thought I knew the definition of love, but recently, I think, it's just recently, and I know we've been married 18 years, it started dawning onto me that for me, love, when I think about it, when I start to understand that love is defined in the person of Christ, I think my work is 50% done.
50% done.
And so I have learned that how I love my wife is first and foremost by understanding my first love for God. And that for me, it was just divine. And that I cannot love my wife, I cannot love my children effectively if I do not love the Lord in the way that He's required us to, or required me to.
Okay.
And so everything else then flows after that.
Okay.
That for me was a hard lesson, and I wish I'd learned it maybe 5 years into marriage, but you can imagine 10 years, this is when I'm learning, 10, 15 years, this is when I'm learning that, should have invested more in my relationship first with the Lord, in my daily walk with the Lord, because you can only love, it's almost like you're going to draw from a wellspring that you share this water with. And so if you don't draw from this spring of water, what will you share? So first draw from this spring, then you know how to share. And that spring is my relationship with the Lord.
You know, you said that I couldn't help but remember of some habits that I'm still trying to undo even now. Typical as a bachelor, I used to come home and I would put my jacket on the couch or on one of the chairs. And it's funny, I still do it, but now I have to remember that it's an irritant for my wife. So I have to remember to take them. So the whole aspect about love is one of those things that is very fundamental. The reason why I think God puts it that we have to love our wives is because it is the only way then we are able also to kind of have a glimpse of how He has also loved us. Yes. Yes. And that's never easy.
Pastor Isaac, that's just, it's amazing when you think about that if you start to understand how Christ has loved us and you internalize it for yourself, it becomes easier then to share that love. And this is why when couples sometimes come to us in crisis, one of the first questions we actually ask them is, do you love the Lord? And it's different from asking, are you following after the Lord?
Yes.
Do you love the Lord?
Yes.
Are you having a loving relationship with the Lord? Because invariably we discover that fell off somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
So to interrupt, you know, it's funny you should say that, because the thing I've been able to pick up is this: even the most brilliant of people, I've noticed that you can tell people what to do.
Yes.
Go do A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you always discover that what is missing is this vertical relationship.
Correct.
There's a problem.
Yes.
And when you have that problem with the vertical relationship, then whatever else you're going to be told at a horizontal level is not going to work. Yeah. Yes, because it's very, very difficult for people to love and to be able to come into that space.
And that's, for me, where I would probably describe is the origin of that relationship tone deafness.
Yes.
That if your vertical relationship is not being well serviced and maintained, you will not be able to see, you'll not be able to hear. I like this song that says, Nipe macho nione.
Nione, yes.
The reality is that if this is not there, you will be blind to what is around you horizontally. And so I know it sounds like a very spiritual thing to say, but let me relate something from my own marriage experience. I have discovered that at the times of having maybe an issue or an issue of conflict with my wife, and because of my personality, I don't confront things immediately. I sort of let it stew, process it. And so with time, I have come to ask myself, why are we going through this conflict? And invariably, almost all the time, I ask myself that question. I connect it to my current relationship and state of my relationship with Christ. And that if I am struggling at that point, it is possible that I have let selfishness then rule in my heart. I have let my own pride then take hold. And when I do that, then that's why I say, I think for men, especially for us who are Christian men, whenever you're going through a crisis, I think the first place you need to go back to is the first love.
It's the first love.
Yeah.
That's so true. And, you know, it's funny that you should say that, because at the end of it all, that is always, that is the key thing.
Yeah.
In fact, I always ask myself, how do people who are not Christians do marriage?
Yeah.
Because it's hard. Okay, they're able to do it. I mean, let's give it up for them. But at the end of the day, it's always a challenge. The other thing that I always tell people is that guys will say we went our separate ways because of irreconcilable differences.
Yeah.
But I say you are an irreconcilable difference from the very beginning.
Correct, yes.
Debbie is a woman, you are a man.
Yeah.
Alison is a woman, I'm a man. You see, those are things to just be aware of. Father of 4 boys. Does it ever scare you that you have to model manhood and how to be a husband?
So let me say this first and foremost, because I don't think I've said this in any forum. I thank God for my father. And we have essential differences in the way we view some things.
Yes.
But there's one thing I learned from my father, especially about his integrity.
Yes.
Okay. And in this country, we do suffer from that malaise pretty strongly. But I learned that from my father. And as I grow older, I start to appreciate him more. Okay? Irrespective of some of the things that we don't see eye to eye on. And I say that because as I see my 4 boys growing up, I start to see a little bit of myself in them.
Yes.
And my wife has always challenged me on this, and she always says that it's important that you maintain a healthy relationship with your father, because especially if you have children, some of those challenges might be passed down to them. Okay. So on a light note, sometimes I look at my boys and I tell them this. I say, you know what, me and my wife, when we're grandfathers, we're grandfather and grandmother, we'll come together and when you guys have children, we'll just come and giggle and just watch you guys because of the things that we see that are being replayed.
Yes.
Understand? And so, yeah, so as I see my 4 children, or 4 boys growing up, I think I spend more time in prayer now concerning, not even them, concerning me.
Wow.
Yeah, because a lot of father-son relationships are broken, not because of what the son has done, but it's because of what the father did not do. And just being acutely aware of my weaknesses and how they can then affect my children. Yeah.
Wow, that's so true. I mean, being a parent, it's the same space. I wouldn't want there to be an awkwardness in the future where we cannot be able to talk because we've not been able to develop that aspect of being able to talk and to discuss all these things. Wow. Obviously, one of the things that comes with age is a sense of self-reflection and looking back. And also being able to pass on a bit of a legacy. What would you tell
My younger self.
Your younger self.
So, that's a classic question.
That's a classic question.
You should copyright that question, by the way. You and Pastor Kwangi should copyright that question.
Yes.
What did I tell my younger self?
Yes.
Coincidentally, I met my wife here just about 20 years ago.
Yes.
And
Salt.
no, actually, just after Salt.
Okay.
Because I was part of Salt.
Yes.
And then after college, I joined the young adults program then. And she then also joined the program. She came from a different church.
Yes.
And I remember that banda, the lower banda actually is where we used to do most of our meetings. And so we dated for about 2.5 years before we got married. Now, if I was to go back to that younger self,
yes,
allow me to go to that stage.
Yes.
Okay, just
That's
before
good.
we got married, I'll probably get married earlier than I did. Yeah, because some of the things that I kept telling myself, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this before I get married. When I think about it, basically to satisfy my fears.
Okay.
And a lot of men do that. That you have a lot of things that you need to tick. And when you think about it, those were not really essential in terms of building the relationship. It could have been, oh, I need, of course, it's important that you have your own place. That's important. You can't take your wife to your father's house.
No.
I won't talk about those things.
Yes.
I'm talking about things like material things. You know, I need to have a car, I need to have a very good job and things like those. And yet I realized that building those things together forms a solid foundation for a long-lasting relationship with your spouse. And so there are some things I'd probably do. I'll travel more.
Yeah.
Like I said, men mature through experiences.
True.
Okay, I'd probably try to do some things that maybe I can't do right now.
Yes.
Maybe I'd climb a mountain.
Yes.
I'd climb more mountains.
Yes.
I'd run more marathons. I'd probably experiment more with cooking. I'd try to do more things that I'm not naturally able to do then.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's funny she said that because I don't know, you've noticed that as your boys are getting older, they don't want your stories too much. I mean, there are times you would tell them, hey, we're going to, and they would be quickly in the car and you'd go.
Yes.
But as they're getting older, they begin to slowly but surely begin to branch out.
Yes.
I think one of the things I definitely tell my younger self is do more. You
Yes.
know, those
Yeah.
road trips.
Correct, yes. Learn a language. For
Learn a
example,
language.
it is so hard to learn a language right now. I'm trying to learn French right now.
Yes.
And oh my goodness.
Yes.
Thinking, if I did this earlier, it would have been much easier.
Much easier.
I used to tell myself that I need to have this much amount of money so that I can do this kind of a road trip. You know, I'll probably say, men, travel light. When you have an experience to do something that doesn't come naturally, take that opportunity, especially if it's something that will build your relationship with people, that will also build your health. I think take those opportunities.
Take those opportunities.
Yeah.
I mean, that's spot on. Travel light.
Yes.
Yes. I see a lot of guys trying to make sure that they have stuff in place. And you never really ever get there. I think one of the things that I've been able to pick out so clearly is good to be able to build a life together.
Yes,
it's
together.
more satisfying.
Yes.
You can be able to listen to and to do all these things. All right, good. Sasawa. Wow. Before I finish, any final words you'd like me to say?
Yeah. I also want to sort of put men at ease, especially men in relationships. I think we are too hard on ourselves. That we beat up ourselves, especially when we fail, not recognizing that the original man, that is Adam, had a failure, but through the work of Christ, that those failures have been cured, and that as we foster our relationship with this man that is the definition of love, that those things that are required of us in the context of our relationship become a bit easier to do. So That's probably what I would tell men. But yeah, but also just like I said, recognize that if you just sit there and
Yes.
hope that you'll mature because time is passing, that won't happen.
That won't
Go
happen.
out and do something.
Go out and do
Yes.
something. All right, folks, you have it. Don't just sit there and hope that you're going to mature. Go out and do something, because that is how we grow as men. I want to thank Sammy so much for coming and being
Asante.
able to just help us be able to see something a little bit about what's happening in his life, and also for the journey that he has been as a family man, and being able to work with families here at Mamlaka Hill Chapel. It also gives me great pleasure to be able to say that this brings us to the end of this 3-part series about marriage, but also in a bigger context about relationships. We hope that you've had a wonderful time as you've been able to glean and learn about relationships, but more than that, we are hoping that we at Mamlaka Hill Chapel can be part of your journey. So if you are interested in any of our pre-marital counseling classes, please feel free to be able to come to Mamlaka, inquire about pre-marital counseling classes. But more than that also, if you are interested in being able to solemnize your marriage, we are also very open. We have incredible resources. We have people like Sammy and Debbie and many other people who go out of their way to be able to facilitate these classes. From me and the entire production crew at the back, we have people like Jairus and Edu and our cameraman. It is goodbye and God bless you and adios, amigos.